Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week we've got Shaun McGivern, Director at Haigh, Lyon Lawyers and Property Specialist, to talk about wills.
Now, that was one hell of an intro, Mike, but you also forgot Shaun from Kids Club.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So about a month ago, for those who have no context to that whatsoever, Shaun, Kat, and I did a How to Grow Wealth for Your Family. It was a Spotify exclusive episode, so if you're watching on YouTube, check it out. And we went over an hour, which Mike never lets me do. Mike's all about short time.
Here for a good time.
It was fun. It was good.
Yeah. It was a great time, and we learned a lot, so make sure to check that out. But Shaun, you're hitting us about wills today.
Yeah.
Wills probably lies up in the same sort of sphere as life insurance, income protection. Yeah. You know, you got a list of 10 things to do. It's number 10. You do 1 to 9, and then you move on to something more fun, right?
Yeah. It sort of seems full circle that we've gone from, creation of wealth and intergenerational wealth as well, to now talking about probably the end part of it, which is the wills and what we do with the wills and all that. Hopefully assets that we've created over the lifetime.
Yeah. And it's a pretty somber thing, and no one likes being reminded of their mortality. No. And wills definitely do that. And I think they get slept on a lot. I mean, I'm not sure what the stats are, but it can't be great of how many people have a will.
50%?
To be fair, I couldn't even give you a stat. All I know is it seems to be that people have this sort of maybe misconception that if I don't have a will, I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
And so, that's...
Does that work? Is that proven?
There's a lot of people out there trying it, that if I don't get this will, I'm going to be immortal, I'm going to live forever.
Yeah.
So
that's a Marvel movie. If the guy doesn't have a will, he can't die.
But there's an old saying, deaths and taxes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those ones where I think, it is going to happen to us.
And recessions.
And recessions sometimes, yes. We don't talk about those.
Yeah.
Much like some people don't like to talk about wills, but, we need to have them in place. It is going to happen to us at some stage, and there's just a lot that can go wrong if you don't have them and the like. So
cool. All right, nice easy place to start, Shaun. Why should I have a will?
Yeah, well, basically we know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it is going to happen to us.
It will be.
I will give you. Lawyers won't give you too many guarantees, but I'll give you one guarantee. It's going to happen.
Surely
to us.
it all just gets handed to my partner, or it all just gets really easily if I don't have a will split equally amongst everybody. It takes a month. It doesn't cost anyone anything. Surely that's the case.
Yeah, there's heaps of those different parts of that misconceptions about wills and the like. The biggest things I can say is, go back to why it is that we work and we do a lot of the things we do. It is for our loved ones. It's for our family, maybe it's our special friends and the like that's there, as we're sort of trying to always, why do we go to work? We go there to earn money, to hopefully buy a house and that. So over the course of a lifetime, there's going to be a number of assets that we're hopefully going to have acquired. And so it's really important that the will gives us control as to what is going to happen with all that wealth. And it's going to go to where we want it to go to. We can dictate how our spouse and our children are going to live going forward after we've gone.
Yep.
And knowing that often provides a lot of peace of mind or comfort that if I have, when I do go, is that they're going to be looked after and that there's some things I can put in place that's going to help them in that regard there. So, really important just to sort of, when's the best time to go and get a will? It was yesterday.
Yeah.
And if it's not yesterday, it's today. And if not today, then come and see or go and see a lawyer tomorrow and get it in place. We often call it like the legal bill of health, and there's a few things that go with it: wills, EPOAs, consideration of asset planning and trusts and how they all work together. But it is one of the most important documents you'll sign. So the sooner you get it done, the better.
Yeah.
And the more your family's going to thank you for it as well.
Yeah. And that's you probably touched on a really good point there. Go and see a lawyer and get it done. You see a lot of stuff online about, $20 to get a will. We can, just write it down.
Napkin and soul bar.
Yeah. It's sort of like, why would we not just do that? Surely that's as good as one that's considered by a lawyer.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of, I suppose, messages out there that you can just go and get a $50 will.
Yeah.
Or back in the day, before the online stuff come online, there was the Whitcoulls will, where you could go and buy a will package and you could sit
Seriously?
there and write it. Yeah, you could definitely go down to Whitcoulls and you get yourself a will package, and it was there, and it was sort of a bit of guidance and a bit of, here it is, and fill this in.
Oh, it feels like some liability for whoever was selling those.
Yeah.
The picture of Shaun's face on the front cover.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, right? So, but I mean, and the problem with those is that wills is, again, it's a specialty area.
Yeah.
I often say, put it in context. when people come to us and say we need wills, when I started out, all the wills instructions would come to junior lawyers.
Yeah.
And it was always like, here's your first job. You've just gone through and you've done your profs and you know how to do a will and all that. But for us, I will always give it to George as a senior associate.
Yeah.
And that, to me, shows the importance of what we feel needs to be given to wills and making sure it's done correctly. If you look at it from lawyers and where we get sued for mistakes, the two big areas happen to be my areas, which in terms of both property and wills.
Yeah.
So I feel that when you're coming, you've got to give it the amount of importance that it deserves and that the client deserves. Giving it to a junior lawyer is not always the best case because they're going to try and run through what their limited experience allows them to do.
Yeah.
They may not be aware of various things that could go wrong with a will, and so therefore they may not construct the will. And that's really what it is. It's construction of a will. Yes, we have precedents, but you need to actually change those precedents and put on the various parts there because those $50 wills that you're talking about there, it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of type thing. They don't normally look to deal with certain things like trusts. They don't normally look to deal with other parts of it that might be families in terms of children from a second marriage or from the first marriage and how that rolls through as well. There may be business assets or property that's been shared between parties as well that they just don't cater for it. So you've really got to get quite specialised in it. Make sure you're dealing with someone that knows what they're doing. Okay?
What about like the scenarios where you might be paying not much at all, the $50 for like an online will kit or using a provider, like a very big provider, but then there might be quite big fees at the back end. Is that?
You've touched on it. So what you're sort of alluding to is if you're sort of going to some of those public trust and the like there is that they do give you a very cheap will at the start. They used to do it for free. They've now realised they actually need to charge for this.
Yeah.
And then there's sometimes a percentage taken out of the estate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At the end of it, and they will administer the estate for you. So while you might be saving yourself a lot of a certain amount of money, maybe $500 or $600 more by going to the outfits that are there, you could be effectively taking a lot off the bottom line of what would normally go to your family or your children, because if it's a percentage of an estate and that estate's grown to quite large over the period of time, 10% of $1 million, $100,000, just basically all that work that you've done throughout your course of your life has just been gone.
Yeah. Great way though to do a little whip around with the kids and say, hey, look, here's the option. I'm going to get this one. You guys chip in and we'll get one that actually works. Yeah.
I've always sort of looked at it as well when you're talking with clients about it and say, look, wills is your words from your grave and it can sometimes be your last impression of who you were as well. Yeah. And if you've gone and, worked your butt off, you've done all this hard investing, saving, you've toiled, and then you come to the end of it and you go, of all of that, I'm going to spend $50 on my life. Yeah. And that's going to be the impression of what you are to your children and to your relatives when it's left. And those ones with those wills, that it could be that there's any number of things that goes wrong and you end up seeing your family, which was quite a tight-knit family, getting blown apart because they're having massive arguments over it. The only way to resolve that may be that they've got to go to court, they've got to get lawyers, they're going to start hating each other, and they're all going to be. My last impression of John was basically he was a bit of a tight ass and he only spent $50 and now we've had to spend tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. I don't speak to my sister or however it is there. It can be awful. And you see those.
Sad, isn't it? Like you think about how often families are broken apart in these situations because it scraps over money. I had a client maybe, 5-7 years ago where she said to me, she had like 4 or 5 kids and she said, Jeff's looked after me really well. I'm going to be leaving 80% of everything to Jeff. And it was quite a lot of money and there's 4 other kids. And I go, do you want them to have relationships at the end of this? Yeah. And she was like, I want to get involved in an argument about it. And it's kind of, to your point, it's not about right now. It's about, what's their relationship going to be like for the rest of their life? And I'm sure there's plenty of siblings, plenty of people who have never spoken to each other again because you haven't set proper expectations of what happens. And then pretty much the idea is there's nothing to argue over, right?
Yeah. And that's it. And I think, we keep harping on back as your words from the grave. It is your ability, your only ability, because obviously once you're gone, you can't do anything about it, to control how the family may be able to relate with each other. You may be able to put in there explanations as to why you haven't given so much to one particular one. Yeah. And it may be that they've done really, really, really well in life, and you feel that actually they don't probably need it as much as, say, John does, because he's struggled a little bit. There may be, learning disabilities or something else that requires additional funds to go to them to have a good quality of life. And that's it. The others will be fine, but we'll put it there. Or it may be as well that they've become estranged. And that is a very common occurrence. Not all families are tight, and it may be that they've not had a relationship for years, and they want to acknowledge the fact that this particular child has put more into their relationship than this particular one who has left and gone overseas and never contacted them for years, to make sure that they don't pop back up on the scene and go, hey, where's my share? And
hey guys, back to the party.
Brother.
The other one's been going, spent years looking after mum when she's been sick. I've been doing all of this sort of stuff that's there, and there hasn't been any, and you pop back on the scene of it, there's always going to be a massive clash. Whereas at least this gives mum a chance to say, hey, I just want to acknowledge all of the care and love that you put into me. And so, this is my way of being able to thank you for it as well.
Yeah, we it's funny, when we were younger, we used to live on a shared driveway, and the house across from us was vacant for, I don't know, a couple of months, and then this guy moved in, and he clearly had some issues going on. Wasn't the full quid. Had to be at the Red Beach pharmacy at 9 a.m. every morning to take the pills in front of the pharmacist, otherwise they would call the police. But pretty nice house. And it turns out we got chatting to him, and his father was a maxillofacial surgeon, and passed away and left him half of a farm, this house, and a whole lot of cash in the will, and left significantly less to the rest of the kids. Now the kids, if your dad's a dentist, doctor, surgeon all wrapped up into one, they had done pretty well themselves, and they started coming at him for the assets. It was just an absolute scrap. And I think, the father probably rightly was like, my son here needs a bit more help than everybody else, and that's why we're going to leave him with a bit more of the assets. But also, crazily, I just thought he was completely lost the plot, because one day he's like, I've just bought a Hummer, and I've just bought this Honda supercar, and I've just bought this. And I was like, yeah, sure, mate, good stuff. Sure enough, week later, Hummer in the driveway.
Must have thought he won.
I was like, and it was really crazy, and it was actually quite sad, because he was just, I think they chewed a lot of cash on court fees just trying to defend it.
Yep. And you see that. I mean, there's been a lot of high profile cases just recently as well with, a very big property land banker, and how the family have gone to war in quite a public manner as well that's out there. It is sad to see, because I'm sure that, the person that's worked that hard for their entire life, that's the last thing they want to see is their family not mourning or celebrating his life, but just fighting. Right? And even when it's large chunks of money, and they're going to have money there for generations to come, they're still fighting. And and that's ideally, it's not what we want to see.
He also mowed our lawns every day until we had to plead with him to stop. It was actually wild.
Teddy Lawn. Shaun, when can a will be unfair? So I write a will, but it gets contested because I write a will and pretty much go, James, see what you're trying to do, but my dog, that ain't legal.
I mean, there's the Family Protection Act as well. So the laws do dictate that we've got to make certain allowances for and look after spouses and children. So it's one of those ones there, like in that situation where I talked about before, where say one of the children is headed overseas and they've become estranged, or there hasn't been a relationship that's there. We often do encourage clients to still give some acknowledgement that they are their child. And while there may not have been a relationship that's as strong as the other ones, that we could give them something. When that helps to show that we've turned the mind to actually, what has the relationship been? I need to acknowledge that I have some responsibility to them, and so therefore it may only be a smaller portion. And we can put in there that it is acknowledged that I have become estranged from it, so therefore I have only given so much towards them because they've lived overseas and we haven't spoken in years. And I think the importance of that is that when it goes before the courts, if it does get contested, is the judge can see quite clearly that the deceased has actually thought about this, they've made consideration, they're aware of what their obligations are under the Family Protection Act to go down that route, and they have given something. And that will weigh probably quite strongly on the judge that there was some consideration about it. And again, that's when I go back to, it is a sort of specialist area, and you shouldn't just have a junior solicitor or someone putting that in, because they probably won't think about that. They won't have had the experience to know it. And that's why we give it the due consideration and importance of putting it with a senior lawyer to do it. Obviously, that comes with an additional cost and the like, but we're talking and can be talking hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that are there, and you're not going to put a little bit into it. Try and think about the family as well in terms of they're grieving. No, well, hopefully they're grieving.
They might be dancing.
The champagne corks are popping.
Might get the good stuff from the top shelf.
I've had to put up with them for years now. Finally, let's go and party. But no, normally, hopefully, they are grieving for you. And the last thing you want to do is put additional stress on them by basically putting them in a situation where there's uncertainty or the like, and they don't really know what's going to happen. I think the other beauty of the will is that it actually sometimes is the opportunity for us, if we've got something that's really important, it could be a watch, could be a family heirloom or whatever it is, and you really want it to go to Johnny, then you can take that and you can give it for mothers. It's often, wedding rings or the like, that if they've got daughters, they might want to give the engagement, they want to give the wedding ring as well. And that, as you can see, when it comes out, has particular importance. There's an emotional value there that can't really be measured. And if you just leave it up to, someone, the executor, to decide, they may not get it to where it is that you really want it to go to. So if you do have those particular items, the will allows you to do that, and it has that sentimental value. It has that certainty for those that are receiving it, and they will treasure that, and you see that quite a lot.
Yeah, so, we had that recently. My grandmother passed away, and I got the Toby jugs. These like porcelain Toby jugs, and do they have any monetary value? Probably not. How sentimental are they to me? Very sentimental, because her and I used to spend time like going through the book and looking at them and stuff. And like, to me, that means more than, any cash you could have left. Yeah,
100%. And I think that's important. The other thing as well is you've got to consider as, again, your children are there as well. And it may be that's really important that, you want children to be looked after by a certain individual. And there may be various reasons for that. That they understand what you were trying to do as a parent. We may not always get it right as parents, as we sort of talked about. But ideally, you'd like to say, well, I'd like them to have the opportunities that I would have had I been alive, whether that's sporting or travel or education or any of that sort of type thing. And it might be that, that particular person is very in tune with the way that you were trying to parent or, look after you and guide your child. And so that may be the better option in your opinion. Yeah. And so a will allows you to set out who it is.
And what about if you've got kids that, maybe their brains aren't fully formed yet?
Yeah.
Maybe we've got a young 19-year-old Michael Vincent with frosted tips, a nipple piercing on the Gold Coast, and he's not ready to have a cool couple $100,000 yet.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't have a photo of that, James.
Ravi, bring it up. How do you plan in we don't want them to have money until X age?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So, and it again is, we don't know how our children are going to be, especially for we talked about this at a certain age, how they're going to come out, and you do your best, but if we pass before we help guide them through to that stage, it might be that you say, well, actually, I don't want them to have this till they're 25.
Yeah.
Or actually, they're not shaping up too well. They like to party too much. We're going to put them
We're going to drip feed this.
We're going to put it to 30. And that gives you a chance for them to sort of see some maturity gain, because, a 25-year-old to a 30-year-old can be quite different. We've all been there and know that. But the beauty of wills is they can be changed. You should be updating them. We sort of say every sort of 5 years at the very least, and you can then make considerations. Actually, Johnny's going pretty well. He seems to somehow managed to have his head screwed on pretty well.
I'm
just imagining Shaun deciding he goes like, I think 21's a good age to give little Johnny access to money, and then you look at him in the corner, he's just whacking his head against the wall. You're like, let's make this 25.
Just looking out the window.
Whereas Jane, she's watching checks and balances every day. She's getting well educated in finance.
So Shaun, maybe a good place to finish up here is you and I sat in the room when we were planning for the Growing Your Wealth for Your Kids event, and there was probably 10 people in the room, and you shared a war story, and then afterwards I had 3 phone calls within an hour going, James, what's Shaun's number? I need a will.
Yeah.
Can we finish on a,
well, there's two war stories that keep coming out of that. There's one, I think, because I'm not sure which one you're going, but one was that the misconception that if you had a will before you were married, that the will was still valid and binding. And if it, and so a few people have been, oh, I've got a will, but I got married. I'm like, well, you need to get another one because your will's now no longer valid.
Yep.
Unless you've done it in contemplation, and it specifically says in contemplation, I think I've used in contemplation of my marriage to Matt Harris, then there we go. So, but then, so there's that one. So if you are getting married, make sure you get a will done afterwards, or you make sure it's done in contemplation. But the other one is if you die without a will. And I think that was the big one that came home to everyone that's there. If you die will and you don't want to talk about it, you effectively died intestate.
Yeah.
So basically that is that you've given no will and there's no direction. So then if that's the case, then the laws of intestacy follow. And the problem with that is that may not be what you actually want to happen with your estate. And I used a very sad war story of a client that came to us. This is before we hadn't seen them before, but they were referred to us. And her husband had passed away. They'd worked really, really hard, built up a significant number of assets for them. They didn't have children. Her husband, though, had become estranged from his father, and the mother was sort of having some medical issues that they were helping to fund themselves because the other sister didn't want to help with it because they kind of thought, well, mum's there and it's good money after bad.
Yeah.
The problem with that was that when she died intestate, she has to make a sort of an election as to whether she tries to make a relationship property claim against her own husband's estate, or whether she goes down the Family Protection Act and the like. Yeah. Because what she got out of that, and this is significant assets that we're talking about with a family home and investment properties, was that she got the personal chattels, she got 155,000, and thereafter that, she would get 2/3 of the estate, with a 1/3 going to the parents.
Yeah.
So now she's having to go cap in hand to dad, who's estranged from son, going, "Can you give me back the money that we've sort of built up?" And dad's thinking he's won lotto.
Yeah.
Here's the son he doesn't have a relationship with, doesn't really care about. All of a sudden now he's got a whole lot of money in the bank, and then also having to go to the mother. That's obviously there. They've been helping, but at the same time, it might be that if mum passes, right, the money doesn't go back to her; it goes to the daughter.
Oh, yeah.
The daughter.
Yeah.
So this is a terrible situation for her, and unfortunately, it didn't end well. She's going to lose money that's there. They, for whatever reason, I can't remember, they didn't have it as joint tenants.
Yeah.
Right.
It was done as tenants in common.
Right.
So that was split. The other one to consider is that they didn't have children in that instance. But if they had children, again, she gets personal chattel. She gets the 155, and then after that, she gets 1/3 of the estate, with 2/3 going to the children.
Yeah.
Now, again, let's say you've estranged from your children or whatever else, it's there, and you're a little bit later on in life, then it So ideally, husband could have saved her a whole lot of grief, and they've worked their entire lives to sort of build up this sort of comfortable life, and that only for it to be ripped away from her. She's going through the grief, and now she's realizing that all of that hard work they've done is also gone.
Yeah.
So, that could have been easily sorted for a will by spending, anywhere between 500 and 1,000.
Yeah.
If it's more complex, then obviously a bit more than that. And you put in the context of, there's your $50 will. How does that look? Spend another 500 and get it right.
Yeah.
And make sure you just give your loved ones what you really want to happen.
Yeah. What a great place to finish up. Shaun, thank you very much for joining us. Really important to remember, it ain't that fun. No offense, Shaun.
No.
I mean, you're a great time, but, I can think of better things to do than get well.
Yeah.
Setting your goals for your future, buying investment property, starting businesses, it's all really good stuff. But if you do not have those good foundations of your home, it'll all come crumbling down if something goes wrong. So make sure to get a will, go and have a chat to the team at Haigh, Lyon, and get it sorted. Thank you very much for joining us. Please subscribe, give us a review, and we'll catch you next time.
I thought you were going to say, and as for coming back to wills being your last, words from the grave, and my words from the grave are rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.